Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the President's Town Hall for graduate students. My name is Sandra Banks, and I work here at the University as Vice President, University Relations, and I'm also pleased to serve as your moderator and host for today's Town Hall. On behalf of everyone at the University, I would like to welcome you wherever you are tuning in from, be it from across Canada or from around the world. We hope you are keeping safe, doing well, and looking forward to resuming your studies in the coming September. We're looking also forward to your input and participation in today's town hall with the President. In many ways, it's hard to imagine that it was only 5 months ago since the COVID-19 pandemic changed the landscape of our university, of our community, of Canada, and in fact, the world. And we have no doubt that our students have felt many of these changes and challenges in profound and very personal ways. Here at Waterloo, we have been working hard to prepare for a fall term that will be mostly online learning, with some in-person activities taking place on campus. We know these disruptions have left many of you with lots of questions about which buildings are open, what services are available on campus, online, questions about international students currently in Canada and around the world. Some of you have asked questions in advance of today's town hall, and we are also expecting further questions as we go through the event today from our live audience. Excuse me. Shortly, I will invite our President and Vice Chancellor to the virtual stage, but first I will share just a brief word about the agenda and the format for today's event. President Hamdulapur will, of course, give a brief presentation, followed by a moderated question and answer session. You will notice currently in the Teams view that the Q&A section is closed for now. If you have a question during Feriden's presentation, by all means hang on to it so that you can include it in the Q&A chat when it opens after the President's presentation is complete. So with that, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you Feriden Hamdulapur, President and Vice Chancellor at the University of Waterloo. Over to you, Feriden.
Thanks very much, Sandra, and good afternoon, everybody. First, again, let me thank all my colleagues who are with me today, and thank you, or all our graduate students, for being with us this afternoon. Before we proceed any further, just like we do at every gathering, I acknowledge and pay respects to the elders, past and present, of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. As we acknowledge that the University of Waterloo sits on their traditional territory, that is the Haldeman Tract, and that land extends its promise to the Six Nations people along the Grand River. I believe we have been communicating with each other ever since the pandemic, this awful pandemic hit our world, our country, our institution. And we communicated in various ways from time to time. I communicated with the entire campus community and other stakeholders, but also quite often I heard from many of you directly. Some issues, concerns, some problems, and we tried to address them as best as we could. We are entering into a new phase here, that is that our fall 2020 term is just about to begin. And before we did that, we thought it will be good to have this virtual face-to-face. Unfortunately, we can't do it, of course, in person, but in this fashion, that we could have a conversation. We could try to directly address some of the issues and challenges that you think you may still be facing going into our fall term. Whether you're a returning student, I believe many of you are current graduate students, but if some of you are new students starting in September, again, it will be good to have to hear from us few things that are happening on our campus that are affecting our programs, your programs, and also directly hear from you, your questions, your concerns and challenges. With that, I just wanted to cover a few things first, and then we'll open it up to questions and conversation and see how far we can get. But please also remember that this is not the end of our dialogue. We're always keen to hear from you. And if there are any other unanswered questions you may have, we'll continue answering them in one fashion or another. So as you are getting preparing to come back, or some of you may already be here, many of my colleagues have been working very hard to ensure that we have proper guidance and directions to everybody coming back to the campus. We call it Welcome Back Waterloo, and in this document there is a lot of extremely important and good information as to how far you should be from each other, to when to wear masks, to all kinds of very useful information, and that is available to everybody. And I will suggest very strongly that you have a look at it and go through it very carefully. In there, as I said, there are some very basic things that I think we are all well aware of, but indoors, we will ensure that we have face coverings, masks or any other types of face coverings. We will make sure that the minimum distance between any individuals will have to be at least 2 meters. We will make sure that you will enter only to the places, the buildings, offices, spaces that anybody is permitted to enter. And some part of the campus will not be accessible to anybody because of a number of reasons. Our province right now, so is our university, is in the phase 3 of the reopening process. I believe, given what's been happening the past few weeks, we are going to stay in phase 3 for a little bit before we progress into phase 4, and I hope that we will at some point, but for the next little while we will stay in phase 3. And phase 3 has a number of restrictions. We will make sure that everybody will respect those restrictions, because one thing that is extremely important to me, to my colleagues, in addition to your academic success and your experience here at the University of Waterloo, is your safety. And this case, it will have to come first before everything else. That regard, we might want to make sure that everything is that we put in place for your safety will have to be adhered to with absolutely no exceptions. So I believe, again, as I said, you will find all this information in that Welcome Back Waterloo guide. So one of the, of course, most common questions that many of our graduate students are asking, and that is about your research, your progress, your thesis, and many of you, of course, have a research thesis, research project, whether it requires laboratory type of research or other types of research. Nevertheless, it's been affected by the pandemic, and you are wondering how you will resume that. In a moment after my presentation, I will ask our Vice President Research, Charmaine Dean, to add a little bit more to this, but as you will recall, again, when the pandemic hit again the world and our institution, we shut down all the research labs. It was an important safety decision. We did so. And then from there on, gradually, we immediately started reintroducing them back to the research stream. First, of course, we gave priority to all research labs dealing with one or another aspect of COVID-19. And then from there on, following a very well-structured criteria, we gradually started opening research labs, ensuring with 100% certainty that reopening those research labs will be done under the safety guidance that no researcher, graduate student safety will be compromised. And I believe today we have been able to open all research labs based on the criteria that I just outlined. So many of the graduate students who would like to come back or who are already back will have gone through this process, but those of you who are not back and would like to come back will have to go through that process, assuring that your supervisor, or in some cases, department chair, they have approved you going back to the lab and making sure that you will stay safe in that lab while you're conducting your research. The other important question, of course, I have received a number of messages, emails from a number of graduate students about their funding and timelines. And I believe, again, later on, I'll ask Jeff Casella to add a little bit more. In both cases, we have given a lot of flexibility and support to our graduate students to ensure that they are not penalized because of this pandemic, and then the timelines are extended, and as best as we can, we could accommodate financially. Again, financial support was also included and extended at least by one term. As I said, winter term is just around the corner. I'm sorry, not the winter term. Oh, that would have been too fast. Fall term is around the corner, but we are already thinking about what will happen in January next year, winter term 2021. As you know, for the fall term, that is the start shortly, we made a certain number of decisions, one of which is maximum class sizes, and whether some small size graduate students will take place in person or online, and there's a lot of information about that and how you will have access to certain facilities, from library to athletics and all of those. But some of you are wondering already, what will happen in January next year? Will January look different from what September is going to look like? The answer is, I don't know. Or I should say, I don't know for sure. There is expectations, hope that January will definitely be different from September or different from our summer term. But given the fluctuations, given a number of places that have already gone through or going through a second wave or return of the first wave, as much as we would like to hope that January will be drastically better and different, right now I do not have scientific or data-based evidence in front of me that will give me that assurance. We will, as we again enter into September and go through it, we will have better data, better information directly or through our public health officials, through the provincial government, federal government, World Health Organization, that will be able to say exactly what January would look like. But for the moment, we can assume that one of the scenarios is possibilities is that January may look just like what September is going to look like or will look like. So with those in mind, again, these are some of the questions that you wanted to have answers, and this is as openly, as transparently, as honestly as I can answer this question. But as we continue our dialogue, hopefully we will be able to give you some better and more definitive answers. We have a large number of international students. We are very, very proud to have them here at the University of Waterloo. You heard me earlier on, I'm so pleased that you chose to come and establish your research career here as a graduate student. But also we need to make sure that some of you may have gone home. Some of you may be at home just watching us remotely. Some of you may be just planning to come to Waterloo, that we will have a number of services available to you all the time, from immigration consulting to, your plans, how to help you, how to assist you with your travel plans. Once you get here, you have to, there is no other option, go through quarantine period, and how to help you to be in quarantine and have to help you during quarantine to meet many of your needs, from food to counseling to anything that you may be in need of, so that we will make sure that those support for international students will be in place, whether you're here or not. As I touched on, counseling, I take a couple of minutes to ensure that everybody will know about this. It's an important part of, again, thinking of our students, that many of our students may experience one or another form of stress or a need for reaching out or counseling. Those services will be available to you all the time, whenever you need them, and of course in a remote fashion, either by telephone or video. But nevertheless, if you are in need of counseling, they will be available to you. So please know that whatever it may be, don't feel alone, don't feel distant. They're available for you to help. One question that again, I keep hearing from our graduate students, they're wondering, they're curious about the movement towards unionization. I can tell you that yes, it's happening, and I do not really know how it will proceed or where it will go. But as a university, we are very respectful to the regulation and legislation around labor practices in the province. So we will be watching. At the same time, there will be a number of information sessions. And again, for that one, I believe I will ask Jeff Casello to add a little bit more information later on. But if you're wondering where this is heading, as I said, we are as a university, we are staying distant, and then we are watching as to where this will go. But we are very respectful, of course, to the whole process. I think, Sandra, if it's okay, I will stop here. There's a lot more to say, but I think instead of me taking a lot of the time, let's give this time to our students and let's hear from them and try to answer their question to the best of our abilities. Again, thank you for listening to me.
Absolutely, Feridun. Thank you very much. Appreciate very much your opening remarks. And I know, as always, you look forward most to the question and answer discussion, the virtual discussion that will follow. So we are now set to begin that Q&A session. And the format, as I alluded to, will be a mix of questions that were asked in advance and those that we received from you live during this discussion. As you look in Teams, you should now see that the live Q&A is open. And just so you know, you will be seeing more faces on the screen than Feridun and I. You will see other leaders come forward depending on the topics. And I know that Feridun has already queued up Jeff Casello, and we'll get to that question in a minute. There are other folks behind also helping just to monitor the questions to make sure that we capture them. We did receive some in advance. We'll receive more today. If we cannot answer all of those questions in the time that we've allotted today, we're committed to do two things. For those that are submitted virtually today, we will respond in a section of the President's Town Hall website as soon as we can. And for any of you who signed up and asked a question, registered for this town hall and asked a question, we will email you back a response to your question if we were not able to get to it in this format. There have been a number of themes that have emerged in the pre-questions, and I may start with those and then we'll get to some of the live questions. The first one that I'm going to ask Ferdinand is, when will graduate students be able to return to work in their offices on campus?
Yeah, I think the graduate students can definitely start coming back to their offices in September, because in September, as the new term starts, our message to everybody, to students, graduate students, to our employees, if you can do what you need to do without being here, and if you feel that it's safer, do so. However, if you need to come back to the labs, for example, as I mentioned, there's a process. If you need to come back to your office where you sit as a graduate student, again, this has to be cleared through the department protocols by the chair or supervisor or supervisor. So you can come back, but you have to follow those steps. Maybe for the research part, Charmaine, may I ask you to just explain what steps need to be taken for them to be able to go back into the lab?
Happy to do so, Ferdinand. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our new graduate students. We're thrilled to have you at Waterloo. All of our labs, more or less, are fully operational right now. We have safety plans that have been developed by your supervisors for them. The process of adding a new student to the lab has already been disseminated to the supervisors, and it's very straightforward. It's just requires making sure that the chair and the dean are aware, and that the safety plan now accommodates one more person in the lab, and whether that might need a little bit of rescheduling because of the constrained environment in the lab, or if the lab has capacity to have someone else, then it's fairly straightforward. And then the new safety plan needs to be posted in the lab. In terms of students who are returning for office use, then it's the same. Ferdinand has given the outline for it, that you need to work with your supervisor to get access through your chair and your dean. But we are welcoming students who need to have the use of the office or the lab for sure onto campus so that you can progress in your research. Ferdinand, I think you've covered it, and I'm happy to have repeated it.
Thank you very much, Charmaine. I'm also going to ask Kate Windsor to step in and tell a little bit more about access to other places other than your lab or your office, places like from library to somewhere to find some food, or athletic facilities. What are the general rules and ability to access to those buildings, during what times and how? Kate, if you could.
Not a problem. Thanks, Ferdinand. So we are just finalizing much of the building access hours, but just generally for students to be aware of, there will be some buildings open and some buildings closed, primarily based on where we have classes occurring. So those will be posted on the webpage within the next week or so. But otherwise, generally, you have the library is planning to open on a by appointment basis for study spaces. There are limited study spaces around campus where the buildings are open. And then you'll also, as Ferdinand and Charmaine mentioned, if you are able to access your office for a workspace, you would do that through your chair. And then we also have athletics facilities coming online, and they have protocols in place to enable bookings and access and appointments to be made in their different facilities. So you can check that out on their website. And food services is also gradually coming online. For some of you who may be here now, you'll start to see some of that happening next week on a limited basis, and then those will gradually expand as students return to campus, and we have health and safety protocols in place for those eating and dining areas. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Kate. And thank you, Charmaine. Good to see you both this afternoon. Ferden, there is a question that does follow up on your comments about unionization. Definitely appreciated your opening comments. The question is wondering a bit more about what the university thinks of this process that's underway.
Yeah, Sandra, as I said, the university is very respectful to the students' democratic right as to how they want to continue that side of work and a relationship with the university, and we are just observing with respect. There are some other details. Perhaps I can ask Jeff Casella, who is very much a lot more, whether involved is the right term or not, but more knowledgeable in this case. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you and see if you could add a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Ferden, and thanks to everyone for the opportunity to be part of the conversation today. You know, Ferden, when I took on the position 4 years ago, my goal and the goal of all of us in the graduate community was really to make Waterloo the very best place to be a graduate student in Canada, to be perfectly honest. And we've been working really hard on that. And as I think about how we are now situated relative to our peers in Ontario and across the country, I'm really proud of many of the things that we've been able to accomplish. That being said, we know that there's more work to be done, and we know that the students have genuine concerns. And so we continue to work with the Graduate Student Association and with others to hear from students about the things that are challenging for them. And what we have learned is that communications really can often be a barrier to us being able to collectively address the situations that students find themselves in. So today I'm pleased to just remind our graduate students about the commitments that we made through Dean's Council to really address the kinds of issues that we hear most about: their funding, the timeliness, the consistency of that funding, and so on, and also to open up new channels of communication. So as you mentioned, and as your slide indicated, and I think what's been shared through the chat already, is we're launching a new webpage today. It's uwaterloo.ca /graduate-relations. Again, the URL has been shared. And I strongly encourage all of our students to go to that page. There you'll find information related to the ways in which we are supporting graduate students, and again, an opportunity for them to communicate with me and all of the members of the graduate student community here on campus. We really encourage that kind of conversation, and we'll look forward to really positive feedback.
Thanks very much, Jeff. This was very helpful, and I thank you and your team, together with our colleagues at GSA, this really great effort to make University of Waterloo really a great place for graduate studies and graduate students. So again, I don't know whether students will be unionized or not, but regardless of that, we are absolutely committed to continuing and accelerating our efforts towards establishing the goal that you outlined, Jeff. So thank you.
Thank you, Ferden and Jeff. The next question, Ferden, relates to the number of spots available in graduate programs and how they may change, how the number of spots may change as a result of COVID-19.
Sandra, when, of course, there is a process every year where our Vice President, Academic and Provost and the Deans, together with Jeff, and we go through our enrollment targets for undergraduate students, graduate students, and this year's targets were set before the pandemic, and we're staying with those targets. And moving forward, I do not expect, I'm not aware, nor do I expect any reduction in the number of graduate students. On the contrary, we want to see an increase in the number of graduate students, and hopefully we will be doing this for next year and the year after and the year after. So graduate studies is an essential and integral part of our institution, especially a research-intensive institution like ours, for the quality of even undergraduate studies. So we are not foreseeing, nor will we plan anything like that, we will reduce number of graduate spots.
Okay, very good. There's another question as it relates to the potential ongoing impact of this pandemic. And the question is, if our program needs to be extended one term, will the university provide scholarships to cover these incurred costs?
Yes, as I touched on, Sandra, we have a number of avenues to ensure that our students are not penalized because of the pandemic, financially or personally or time-wise. So those are all in place. And if I may ask Jeff again to quickly outline some of the examples of how we are helping our students, whether it is for the extension of their term or, help them with finances.
Yeah, thanks again for the question. So if we start with the academic side of the house, in terms of academic deadlines, there are, of course, deadlines in your PhD program related to comprehensive exams or proposals and so on. So if you're at that point in your graduate student career, we've already made arrangements for you to have those deadlines pushed back by one term. So the university regulation, for example, on comp exams is such that you have to finish by term 7. If you were affected by COVID, you now get to term 8 to complete those research milestones. So that's taken place. We also waive the need to petition for time extensions if you're at that point in your graduate career as a master's student or as a PhD student. So that requirement was waived for the spring and for the spring term across all 6 faculties. But on the funding issue, I think, Ferdinand, you covered a little bit of it in your introduction. We offered additional thesis completion awards that were sponsored in part by the Graduate Student Association and the Graduate Student Endowment Fund with support from the university. We've also made available some funds to supervisors to continue to support students with their research. The tri-agencies have also built out some opportunities for extended funding for our students. And beyond that, we're evaluating our potential to increase scholarship funding beyond what would be considered normal term limits. And those conversations continue with me and, as you know, Ferdinand, with the university senior leadership. And so we're hopeful to be able to provide some more guidance in coming days. And of course, this conversation continues, and the longer the pandemic goes on and the more evidence that there are that our students are being disrupted, we'll of course be cognizant of that and trying to support our students in every way we can.
Jeff, I know that you are also talking to Jim Rush, our provost, helping some international students specifically. Can you give just a little bit more information on that?
Sure, Ferdinand, thanks. So our students who are in our international doctoral students will know that they get the International Doctoral Student Award that is intended to support them to offset the tuition differential between international doctoral students and domestic doctoral students. For our master's students, we offer a similar award. It used to be known as the International Master's Student Award. Now it's known as the International Master's Award of Excellence. And those two programs normally students won't be eligible after their term limits, and we're now considering the extension of those programs by at least one term for students again who are affected. My team has been working over the last couple of days to understand how many students that will apply to and what the financial implications will be for the university and for the faculties. And so we're providing that information tomorrow to the provost and to the deans and others. And we'll hopefully have a decision tomorrow on the university's capacity to support that initiative.
Thanks so much, Jeff, for doing this. I should, Sandra, if I may take another minute, mention that soon as the pandemic hit, our Vice President of Research, Charmaine Dean, was very much concerned about those students, graduate students, who got funding through industry contracts. And those industries, of course, because of the pandemic, they were not able to fulfill their commitments, financial commitments to the university. She and her other vice president research colleagues around the country worked extremely hard with the federal government to ensure that we had support for those students. So Charmaine, do you want to add a couple more words to this?
Yeah, thanks, Ferdinand. I mean, obviously at the start of the pandemic, there was no access to labs, and a lot of industry contracts then were not being taken care of or being delayed. Timelines were being extended. And so we worked with the federal government, as you said, Feridan, to make sure that the students who were affected by this, who would have been working on those contracts, would receive funding from the government. And so that has been in place. We have eyes on this file to go back to the federal government to see if there are other things that need to be put in place to support students. So keeping a good link in with Jeff Casello's office has been very instrumental in making sure that we argue on behalf of students. The major effort needs to be that it is a united front from all the vice president's research across Canada, and we are committed to doing that. I see that there are comments in the chat line about what might happen in the fall with regards further delays in the pandemic, and we will be active on this file again in the fall if there are issues that need to be faced with regards to the contracts file.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you. I thought it will be important for our students to hear that side of the issue as well. Over to you, Sandra. Sorry, it took a little long to answer this part.
No, not at all. Very important. We did touch earlier in that question on international students, so I'm just going to bring in this question. I'm an international student still awaiting my study permit. Do I have to wait for my study permit to come out first before I start school?
I think the answer is yes, but I'm going to perhaps turn to Chris or Jeff, somebody to help me with that question. I think it's important to have that study permit in place first before anything else starts. But
maybe I can jump in, and then if Chris wants to add something. Our understanding is that a student doesn't need a study permit to be engaged in the academics remotely. But Feridan, we are strongly recommending the students get the study permit. The worst case scenario is that a student spends a term with us without the study permit, and then when they apply, they're denied for whatever reason, and then they spent that term, and then they've got the delay associated with, or the inability to getting a study permit. So we're strongly recommending that they do get the study permit, even if they are staying remotely. And of course, if you intend to come to Canada and you are an international student, you do need the study permit to be physically present in Canada. And I guess there's a number of questions that are coming, and I think it might be useful, and maybe our colleagues whom are monitoring in the background could provide some links to for our participants where they could get direct immigration consulting, because that's always the best pathway for them to get the most up-to-date and accurate information.
Yeah. Jeff, my understanding is that you can still be counted as an international student even if you're not physically here, but to be able to be counted, you have to have that study permit. Again, I'll leave it to the other experts, but as Jeff said, it is best to have that study permit in your pocket before you either start coming here or commence your studies remotely.
Okay. Thank you both for that. I'm going to go to a question that came in live today. Perhaps a specific question. What will happen for PGWP students if online learning is extended?
Hey, help me with PGWP, please, somebody.
Yeah, I can help. That's the post-graduation work permit.
Okay.
And so what happens is that normally an international student, the duration of their post-graduation work permit is tied to the amount of time that they are physically present in the country of study in Canada. For the fall term, my understanding again, and this is best confirmed by our immigration consultants, my understanding is that the federal government has agreed that remote delivery this term will be counted towards their duration in Canada. And so this remote delivery term won't be counted as a negative against the duration of their post-graduation work permit. But that decision, if we do continue with remote delivery for winter 2021, that will be another decision that the federal government will have to make. And of course, we'll advocate on behalf of our students, but we will only be in a position to report that outcome to our students. We can't influence that outcome.
Okay, thanks very much, Jeff. A variety of questions covering space and access. I'll come back to that in a minute. A question again from international students: what financing supports are available for international students?
In general, again, there is a long list of financial assistance to scholarships, research assistantship available to graduate students. They could be found either in a graduate studies website or an individual faculty website. So I would ask them to look at those websites and get all the information. Some of them are faculty specifics, but the university specific ones are listed in graduate studies and postdoctoral affairs website.
Thank you, Feridun. I'm going to bind together a few questions, knowing that we did cover off what spaces are available for research, for office. There's quite a few questions about what service space is available, whether athletics, whether library, a variety of other services and support spaces that would be open on campus, generally for students.
I think Kate covered some of this earlier on. I don't know if there's anything more to be added to what you already covered. What I should add, perhaps to what Kate mentioned, we will be strictly enforcing social distancing and density issues in those buildings. Even if the students have access to those, we will be monitoring, ensuring that safe distancing, face covering, and all other aspects of safety measures will be strictly enforced. In saying that, I don't want to sound a little harsh, but it is your safety that we're tremendously concerned about, but it's also the safety and well-being of all the others. So for that, our tolerance level is absolutely zero, and we will make sure that, again, those buildings, those places that are accessible, they are accessible with a lot of caution and care. We will have, you may, for example, as a graduate student, if your course professor decides, and if it's appropriate space-wise, to hold small size graduate classes in person or seminar classes in person, we will make sure that those places are very routinely, frequently cleaned, and you have access to hand sanitizers, to everything else. Make sure that your access is done in a very controlled manner. Whether it is a study space at the library, or whether you, by appointment, as you indicated, Sandra, go to use the swimming pool or athletic facilities, they will be under constant care, ensuring that they're properly cleaned and available to our students. Kate, I don't know if there is anything that you want to add to what you had covered already, but I think you outlined all the places that our students, graduate or undergraduate, will have access.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're still open to other questions on space or access that haven't been answered, but I think Feridun, you did a great job, and Kate, thanks for your earlier comments. I have a question. There's a few that have come in around the university's response, starting with the Amy Cooper incident in New York in the spring, and then more generally how the university is responding to the BIPOC community in terms of addressing systemic racism in the community.
Yes, Sandra, this is an important question, like all other questions, but I think we are. Was quite disturbing to see what was happening, especially south of the border, and then what it will mean to our country and our campus community here. So the university made some very sincere and definitive statements as to our community. Absolutely, again, will have no tolerance and will have no place for any source of racism. That especially racism related to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And we made a number of important statements, and we meant what we said. In those statements, we also indicated that we want to move forward with a long-term decisions that will further emphasize our commitment to anti-racism. And for that one, we have been listening. There were several stages of consulting with our campus community, but especially people from our Black students, faculty members, staff members, Indigenous communities, and then we'll continue listening, and then until we have a convergence to what it is that we will put in place that will move the institution forward and put some very important measures in place. In the meantime, as we were engaged in this conversation and consultation process, initial consultation process, we had confirmation of some of the initiatives that were already in progress, but it enabled us to accelerate those, and we announced some of them, what they will be, that we are putting in place, that we don't have to wait too long, or we don't have to wait at all to put those in place. So moving forward, again, our Vice President Research, Charmaine Dean, has embarked upon engaging with, again, large number of our stakeholders, our community members, especially BIPOC community members, together with hundreds of people who wanted to express their willingness to participate in the process that will build something at the university that we will be benefiting from as moving forward as an institution that will have no place whatsoever for any source of racism. I think we are getting very close to completing at least the first round of our conversation and consultations, and I'm committed to making a significant progress and continuing our dialogue and putting something in place that will establish a permanent presence of the subject as we move forward. There's a lot more to be said and discussed, but given the time we have, I think this is where we are, and where we are is something that I believe our institution is proud of because of the tremendous support and engagement we have from our community.
Thank you, Feridun. Very important response to a very important question and questions that are being asked today. The next question we're going to, it relates to some concerns about communications that are direct to grad students during the lockdown, and if there are steps being considered to improve this communications to grad students.
I would like to know just a little bit more on the specifics of this concern. We wanted to make sure, of course, Sandra, you were right at the one of the principal persons who ensured that right from day one we were communicating with everybody on our campus, from updates to information to next steps to very major decisions. I will continue doing that. And if there were some graduate student specific pieces of communications that if our students thought we missed, I really like to know. I'm sure that you will as well, Sandra, and we'll make sure that we won't continue missing those important communication issues. I should also mention that at some the way we started, the way the pandemic hit our institution, immediately we made a decision that we will, after a week of pause, we will finish the winter term of 2020 completely online. We did this, and then while we were with that decision, we established this emergency measures group that met several times a day, including evenings, nights, weekends, and we continued in that fashion for a while. And there was important communication coming out of the emergency measures group. At one point, we transitioned it into a more integrated and coordinated planning group for the university. Again, communication was a very important and integral part of this and continues to be. So this is right now how we are conducting our business or decisions, making our decisions related to all aspects of our university operation, but obviously impacted by COVID-19. And again, communication is an integral part of that. Sandra, I'm expanding this a little bit, but I hope that I over-answered this question. But if I still have not touched on a graduate student specific one, I will be happy to follow up on this one later on.
Thank you, Farad. And I think that all of that's very important background to know. I think part of the question was how can we direct communications directly to grad students and not always through the PI or the principal investigator. And I'm not sure if Jeff wants to come back and address that, or we can make note of that and say, you know, part of the benefit of these town halls is to listen and learn about what is working and what isn't, so that we can address it as we go forward. So that's what I understood the key question in that to be. So, yep.
May I jump in quickly? Just very quickly. What was happening is we were trying very hard to tailor the content of the communications, because there were so many, to specific audiences. And so when there were communications that were going to employees or staff or faculty or to students, my team became involved, and we tried very hard to tailor those messages so that they'd be specifically relevant for graduate students. And along the way, with the number of communications, there may have been one or two that didn't get that translation from my team, just given the volume. And what's happened now is we are working very closely with Sandra's team through Nick Manning, our Associate Vice President of Communications for the university, and we're ensuring that any communication that comes from the planning groups that Faradin mentioned is translated and is directed specifically to the grad student audience. So I think going forward, my team in partnership with yours, Sandra, is making sure that graduate students are getting grad-specific content in a timely way.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for joining us again on camera and clarifying that. And we are committed to collaborating and improving the quality and the quantity. I'm going to move to the next question, which is obviously pandemic related. If we go into lockdown again, will we pause the term count?
I hope you won't have to. Should that happen, will be most unfortunate, and we will make sure that again, Jeff reiterated it many times, that we will not let our students to be penalized by that. So whatever will be needed, we will make sure that they will be in place for our students. But I'm hoping that all the hard work, all these measures that we're trying to put in place here and in the province and in Canada will probably enable us to move forward without another lockdown. But also, we are not, of course, isolated from the rest of the world, especially from the south of the continent. Anyway, we will be prepared for every possibilities, and we have these are in our contingency plannings, but our students, as I said, will do everything in our power possible, ensure that they won't be penalized by that.
Great, thank you very much, Ferdinand. The next question is a point of clarification. Do supervisors need to submit a new lab plan every time another student joins the lab?
Good question. I think Charmaine made it very clear that if you're adding more people to the lab, and if adding more people to the lab somehow compromises the safety situation, then it will have to be reconsidered. But our safe opening is very clear of laboratories and other facilities that we would like to know exactly at any given time how many people are there and what the density of that place is. If adding new students will change that, yes, we would like to know. Charmaine, anything further?
Thanks, Fred, and I think you covered it. I don't know if I was clear enough earlier, so maybe I'll repeat. There is no need to have a new safety plan developed. It's simply how another person in the lab will fit in. So the whole safety plan that has been approved before, we don't have to go through the safety plan review, the safety plan process. It's simply the PI identifying with the chair and the dean's approval that this person is in the lab and how the scheduling will accommodate the person. So the full review of the safety plan is not required, and we've sent a message to the to all employees this week explaining that.
But Charmaine, you mentioned scheduling, so it's possible that the students may not be in the lab all the time. They may have to follow a schedule because of the number of people involved.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charmaine. I think that was very helpful for that question. The next question asks specifically, is there a roadmap for 2020 graduate students who want to be teaching assistants?
Jeff, help me with this question. Roadmap, in what sense? But yes, I mean, we will be in need of teaching assistants, whether we are teaching remotely or not, and there will be some assignments. But Jeff, do you want to explain a little bit better than I was able to?
Sure, Ferdinand. I was having some trouble with my internet connection, so I've moved nearer to my modem. Hopefully that will make my connection better. I think, Ferdinand, the question may be motivated by international students who are struggling to understand whether or not they're eligible to be TAs for this fall term. Because we have students who are joining us for the first term remotely, they won't have come to Canada and they won't then have a social insurance number. And without a social insurance number, the university can't engage those students as teaching assistants. So if you are in that situation where you're an international student who has not yet been to Canada or who doesn't have a social insurance number, then for this fall term, you won't be eligible to be a TA, but the university will honor its funding commitment to you if we made one to you. What that will mean is you'll receive your funding in a different way for this fall term, and your TA opportunities may be rescheduled later on in your academic career. So I think that's what motivates the question, Ferdinand, but if it doesn't, I'm happy to follow up if more questions come in.
I think you answered it quite well, and I learned something new, so thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Next question is regarding international students who can't get to Canada. Do they have the option to opt out of UHIP or GPAS services?
Chris, are you there?
I see.
Jeff came on too, so he can help.
Okay.
Sandra, could you just clarify the question? GPass meaning transit pass?
Yes, transit. UHIP or GPass, which is the Grand River Pass.
The Grand River Transit is that The fee for Green River Transit will be mandatory for grad students as decided by the Grad Student Association this coming term. So that's on that. I have been involved in the UHIP discussions, and if Dennis is on the call, he can jump in and save me if I'm not sharing correct information. But at this point, the plan will be, if students are not in Canada, we intend to come up with a process where UHIP will be, students will not have to pay UHIP fees.
Okay. Since we haven't heard from Dennis, that means that's correct. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you both. We are getting to the very short end of the list of questions, so I will ask this one, and unless we get a few new or different questions, we may turn it over to you shortly for some closing comments, Faridun. But we will answer questions for some time yet if they are available. So this one is about Winter 21. If Winter 21 ends up online, how will it affect co-op for international students?
I'm assuming that this is for all students or just graduate students. So
Faridun, the question is specific, sorry to interrupt. It might have been my articulation, but it's co-op for international students.
Yes.
In Winter 21.
Yeah, co-op for international students, but before I give specifics to that question, I should mention that our co-op office has been working tirelessly, ensuring that as many of our students could be placed on co-op work terms. And today, again, through great efforts of everybody, we've been able to place over 5,600 students in one form or another. For international students, obviously, they can, if they are not able to travel, and if they are where their home base is, if there is a co-op job available and that co-op job is not posing any health or safety risks, they can take those co-op positions. But if co-op jobs require travel, we will discourage our students from traveling and taking those co-op jobs. Nora, may I turn it over to you again? You have very specific information as to how this could be exactly done.
Yes, thanks very much, Faridun. And just as you said, we have a team that supports our international co-op efforts, and that team is continuing to work on supporting all of our students who have work terms, no matter where those may occur in the world. And we will continue to do that and help students source additional opportunities through different channels than we've done in the past. So that continues to be the plan, to support our students have a work term no matter where they may be located.
Okay, so Nora, if you could clarify, I said we discourage you from traveling. Should I retract that?
No, that's accurate. Students, if they're in their home country, they would be looking for work terms in that country.
Okay.
And not be traveling outside of their home country. And similarly, staying within, if they're in Canada, staying within Canada.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank. Did you want to add anything to that, Faridun?
No, I think with that we are very clear, and hopefully again we will be in the next few months, whenever that could be, our co-op placements will go back to where they have been historically at very, very high levels, but we will be very resilient, making sure that our students are not missing their experiential education opportunities at all because of the pandemic. But it has been one of the biggest challenges that our university experienced in terms of maintaining and growing our co-op operation, which has not been easy. But at the same time, the numbers I shared with you, there are still no other institution anywhere in the world who could come even close to our co-op placements, and that's again thanks to the depth of our co-op operation and commitment of our employers to University of Waterloo's leadership in co-op.
Thank you, Ferden, and thank you, Nora, as well. I do have one question that may turn into our final question, and it's an important one as well, in addition to all the others that have been posed today. When will travel restrictions lift for conferences?
They, I believe, lifted when we have when we enter into a different stage, different phase regarding travel, and depends on where the conference is and quarantine restrictions. So right now there will be no change at all in our position with those restrictions that will limit the in-person attendance to conferences. But as you also know, many conferences or gatherings, meetings, they have switched to online or remote mode. So we cannot, as an institution, independently lift those restrictions. We'll have to wait some directions from federal government and others. And if the conference is outside of Canada, of course, it will very much depend on what other countries are doing. You may go somewhere and end up with 14 days of quarantine and miss the whole conference, even if you're able to travel. But I doubt very much if you'll be able to travel.
Thank you, Ferden. Like everything else, many of these questions and answers are reliant on Canadian, local, and international authorities who are issuing guidance for universities and institutions around the world. It looks like we may have one final question, and this is it. The question is generally about the status of in-Canada field work. Mm-hmm. Is there any perspectives that could be shared on in-Canada field work right now?
I think we had several requests, and I think Charmaine's office dealt with those. It is, you have to have permission if your field work is essential and safe. Very rarely we let our students do it because we want to make sure that they will be safe, not just for traveling, but they will be safe when they get to where they wanted to go. Charmaine, you have a protocol that is very strict, but if you want to add a few more words, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So we have been entertaining requests. We know that the field trip season for the fall has started, and we have been entertaining requests. There needs to be a safety plan put in place, and it depends on where you're going and the receptor agency. So if it's an Indigenous community, then there are even stricter guidelines depending on exactly what that community thinks. So there'll need to be some discussion, but we are entertaining requests for field trips for the fall, and we have had several move through the pipeline recently. As with everything else, is the trip essential to the research? And if the trip is essential to the research, then please discuss with your supervisor. And then there is a process, and as Ferden says, it's well outlined on the research website, the coronavirus research website. You just need to identify what is the safety plan, what's in place, etc. What happens if you get COVID? There are clear instructions on the website, and we're also happy to help. If you need assistance with it, then reach out to the research office.
Thank you, Charmaine. On that note, let me say thank you to Ferden for leading us in this discussion today, as well as a collective thank you to the other senior leaders who joined in on the conversation, and were very, very helpful in addressing the very important questions that you as grad students have posed of the university. I just want to reiterate that we will post to the President's Town Hall website a list of questions and answers that were received, as well as a video recording of today's town hall. And know that, as Ferden mentioned at the beginning, this isn't the end of our conversation. We have resources available on our COVID-19 website that are continuously updated based on external advice and internal stakeholder advice as well. That also includes our Welcome Back Waterloo guide. And we know that these kinds of town halls really do help inform our ongoing decision making and consultation processes as we continue to manage and thrive through these very challenging times. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Ferden to offer some closing remarks to today's town hall.
Thank you, Sandra. Again, I really want to thank our graduate students for being part of this conversation. I'm really glad that we had this opportunity to have a conversation and try to answer some of your questions, but also let you know that we are all in this together. It has been an incredibly challenging experience, and in some aspects continuing to be so. But we are also showing each other that we can, whatever it is, whatever the nature, whatever the world is gonna throw in front of us, we can go through this if we are side by side, shoulder to shoulder. One day, when you have an opportunity to talk to your students, talk to your colleagues, talk to whoever, and when you're in a leadership position, and talk about perseverance, talk about resilience, talk about determination, talk about rising above things, you will say that, let me tell you, the days, my graduate student days, that I had to go through this pandemic, and this is what I learned. So it is not easy. It has not been easy for any one of you, but at the same time, I'm so proud of you that you have been resilient, you have been strong, and you're going through this. You are not abandoning your studies. You're very committed to your studies, and your university, we are so committed to you. We will be talking, hopefully, about some other things, non-COVID things, very important things, about your progress in your graduate studies, in your research, in your scholarship, and we will all be very proud and very excited. Thank you so much. As Sandra said, we will continue communicating, and please let me know, let Jeff know, let Sandra know, let all of us know if you are in need of specific information and you don't think that you're getting that information. We'll make sure that that will not happen. Thank you again for joining us, and I thank all of my colleagues who took the time to be here with you. This was an important conversation. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, who may turn into be a very wet, rainy afternoon. Thanks so much, Sandra, for directing us and seeing this town hall.